In the year 2010, there were 7,500 non-economic loss awards for chronic pain awarded by the WSIB. Recently, for the last 8 or 9 years, we have not been able to obtain any statistics from the WSIB as to how many chronic pain awards for non-economic loss they've awarded. But I think one can easily surmise that yearly there's close to 10,000 injured workers per year who develop chronic pain. The outcome for injured workers who have chronic pain is quite tragic. Today I'm going to go through one case of an injured worker client we've been dealing with whose injury was in 2015, and we have been fighting with the board through various forms of litigation such as AROs, case managers, etc. for the past 6 years. And if you weren't already having psychological problems, fighting with the WSIB for 6 years, that alone would give you mental issues. Along the way, I'm going to discuss what is the only effective treatment of chronic pain known medically, and I will deal with a critique of what the board is doing now based on a report from David Corey, who's the founder of Chronic Pain Functional Restoration Programs Centers in Ontario. So starting with Ms. Lopes, she was injured in March 2015. She was employed 25 years as a factory worker. She worked on the assembly line. She obtained epicondylitis in her elbow. Epicondylitis is also known as tennis elbow. It's a tendon problem where it becomes inflamed, and it would cause you to have some difficulties in manipulating products on an assembly line and lifting them. For most people, it disappears after a few months, and for others, it remains a chronic problem, but it's not serious. The worker missed no time from work after she was diagnosed. She continued on light duties. The employer found that she wasn't very productive on light duties. They laid her off in September 2016, which would be about 18 months later, and the worker was sent for a vocational assessment. So a vocational assessment from the WSIB is they're trying to determine what future vocation should the worker do. At the vocational assessment, which is conducted by a psychologist, they found that the worker was having moderate depression and anxiety. Moderate depression and anxiety is you're withdrawn, you're feeling in crisis, you're not sleeping properly, you're not getting along with people. It's a serious condition. The board decided 6 months later to train the worker to be a switchboard operator and a receptionist, and that she would learn English and computer courses. She had surgery in November of 2016, which is a couple months before she's starting school, and the surgery was of no help. She starts school. She tells the case manager she's feeling depressed, she's making no progress in school, and that is when she retains us to be her lawyer. In August, we start to ask the WSIB to send her to a functional restoration program. So that would be August of 2018. She'd been in school by that time for a year and a half, made no progress. The board did send her finally to a psychologist. Psychologist said she should be sent to a functional restoration program. We send a letter to the chairman of the board, to everyone in sight, saying please send her for a functional restoration program. The problem is that the functional restoration program that the WSIB had from 1990 until 2017 was ended in December of that year because the WSIB stated it was too expensive, So they found a cheaper program for $300 of sending workers for 5 psychological treatments. The FRP program was costing them between $12,000 and $18,000 a worker. But as I'll show you later, the psychological programs are of no value, and FRP programs were of great value. The board policy is that when somebody has chronic pain, they should be treated within 6 months of the accident and the diagnosis being made. And they should be given a behavioral therapy, which is what the FRP program is about. The Act says that workers are entitled to health care as may be necessary, appropriate, and sufficient. So the board's under a legal and their own policy to provide an FRP program. In answer to my letters, the board agrees to send the worker in January 2019 to an enhanced treatment program. Let me describe for you the first day at the program. The worker has diabetes. She gets to the program at 9 o'clock. No one attends to her. She's left to sit by herself. She's told not to go anywhere. She doesn't have any provision for lunch. They tell her not to go for lunch. She sits there till 2 o'clock. She gets an attack of her diabetes. And they call for her daughter to pick her up and take her home because she's suffering so much from the diabetes she needs help. That was day number 1. As one can see, the program was not going to go very well, poorly coordinated, poorly organized, and we'll go into some more problems with the board's program. In June of 2019, I asked for the board to send the worker to Nova Health, which is the only center in Ontario that provides a proper FRP program, and asked that the program be started again. I was ignored, and I began to prepare a lawsuit against the WSIB to try and force them to provide the program. To get this lawsuit going, I asked Dr. Corey for an opinion as to what the board is giving the worker and what is required. And he sent a report, and we will put copies of the report available to the people watching this video or my presentation. He made the following points. 1, psychotherapy that was given to the worker was counterproductive as it made her reliant on the therapy and gave her no hope that her condition would resolve. 2, the orthopedic specialist should have given the worker a full description as to why further operations on her arm weren't going to be of any value, which was never done. 3, treatment for depression, anxiety, sleeplessness should have been given manual therapies. In other words, people should have been with the worker, helping her on an hourly basis, on a minute basis, dealing with the pain so that she could function even with it. She should have been given assertiveness training as to how to take control and how not to aggravate her feelings of hopelessness. And this is really the number one factor that's missing from the board's current programs, which is that the board treatment should help the worker slowly but surely take more control over her current life. And this type of treatment needs 5 days a week, 6 hours a day for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. The cost, according to Corey, is $15,000 to $18,000 currently. Corey said that Loeb should be referred to the dedicated multidisciplinary assessment as soon as possible, and it should have been done 8 months after onset, not years later. Corey has been doing functional restoration programs since 1979. He's done some studies, which I'm going to get into, and he ran the Mount Sinai program, funded by the Workers' Place Safety and Insurance Board from 2010 until its closure in December 2017. So he would be Canada's #1 expert on the treatment of chronic pain, and he makes these recommendations, which of course the WSIB completely ignored. In 2010, Corey and the other medical staff at his Functional Restoration Program Center did a study, and I'd like to just quickly go through it. One is previous studies of chronic pain treatment showed that 66% of workers get back to work after the treatment, whereas people who receive no treatment, only 27% go back. The study then goes through the treatment they provided, which I outlined previously. The occupational therapist in a proper treatment will do home visits, they'll visit the work site, they'll help the worker when they're doing modified work, they show the worker how to simplify techniques in their work they're doing to avoid problems, they do proper posture, they provide ergonomic equipment. In Ms. Lope's case, she got 0 of that. They rationalize medication, they do lifestyle changes, Lope's got none of that. And finally, they coordinate with everyone who's got something in the barrel in the case. They speak to the family, they give the family counseling, they coordinate closely with the funder, which in this case would be the compensation board. They deal with the family doctor, they deal with the lawyer. They're trying to get everyone involved in the program so that everyone's working together to try and make the worker productive. This study in 2010 by Corey and Bossy, 80% of the people they dealt with in the study, which was 454 patients, 80% were injured at work. The average time they'd been off work was 2 years. 26% didn't complete the program because they wouldn't cooperate. 75% of the patients who did complete the program reported significant improvement. 49% reported less pain. 16% reported less depression. And 60% went to vocational training, and 7% went back to work full time. The program was slightly less effective for those people who had very poor English, and the program lasted from 4 to 12 weeks for the workers. So they had a relatively large sector of success, some 67%. In October 2019, I'm all ready to sue the WSIB, and the day before we're to file our lawsuit in the Superior Court, the WSIB says we're going to send the worker to a new program. And the worker goes to the new program for 6 weeks, and the new program is no better than the old program. The worker makes no progress. And the doctors in the new program find that she's still severely disabled. The case then sits on hold for 20 months. Nothing happens. The worker keeps getting paid. Part of the problem is COVID. We don't interfere at that point because Corey writes me another letter when I'm prepared to sue the board again at the beginning of 2020 and tells me it's too late for this worker. Given the severity of her symptoms and that it's now been 5 years since the accident, it's too late to treat. Treatment should have been done within the first year, at least within the first 2 or 3 years. 5 years later, way too late. Finally, the board picks the file up in August and sends the worker back to retraining to be a retail sales clerk. The first 4 weeks of the training have been extremely poor. The worker has a very poor memory due to her depression and is making very little progress. And we went for an ARO hearing on this case about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're waiting for a result. The worker is to be in school for 14 months to learn to be a retail sales clerk. Let me just conclude with the following. The WSIB has $8 billion in extra assets. This year, as of the June 30th, they are on their way to make a $2 billion profit. They have $2 billion in total expenses, and if you count the money they put into their own employees' pensions, employee benefits, etc., they have $2.4 billion that goes out of the board every year. The board has $40 billion in assets. If they got a 6% return on their money just sitting in the bank or in stocks or real estate, they could drop employer premiums down to 0. Think about it for a second. Employers don't have to pay a penny to the WSIB, and the WSIB could still pay all the costs they have for claims and administration. An organization with that much money, one would think, could pay $14,000 to $18,000 for the 7,000 or 8,000 patients they have per year, injured workers who need the best treatment possible. The fact they don't is very, very tragic. Thank you.